Have you ever thought about moving to the state of Georgia? With Atlanta being one of the most watched real estate markets in the country and considered one of the very best, if not number one, a lot of people really are focusing their attention now on the great state of Georgia. Georgia offers rural lifestyles as well as large metropolitan lifestyles. And you've got great easy access to international travel, access to great technology, and you can really get to pretty much any type of destination you're looking for within about a 4 hours drive. Whether it's the beach, the mountains, the lakes, farmland, forestry, or really anything else that you're looking for, you'll find it right here in Georgia. But nothing is ever perfect. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the top 5 pros and the top 5 cons of moving or visiting Georgia in 2023. And if you've had any thoughts about visiting the state, you're definitely going to want to consider these before making any decisions. And as always, if you do have any questions as we go throughout the video, please be sure to comment those below and I'll get you the answers as quickly as possible. Hey there, I'm Bru Krebs, your real estate expert right here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm so happy that you joined me today to talk about the top 5 pros and the top 5 cons of living in Georgia in 2023. No state is perfect, and everything has its pluses and minuses. Whether it's those concerns about traffic, culture, crime, schools, food, or even scenery, Georgia is no exception. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about those pros and cons, and I'm going to be giving you a little bit of description and information for each one of them. And be sure that you stay tuned to the end of the video to hear all of them, because some of them, they're going to be quite astonishing, and you'll definitely going to want to know about each one of them before making a trip or moving here to the state of Georgia. And depending on your preferences, your style of life, your budget, and your aspirations, many of these factors really can play significant roles in how your life is affected if you visit or move to the state. But without further ado, let's start with pro number 1, and it's that affordable cost of living. The cost of living in Georgia relative to many states, especially when you consider it versus California, Washington, New York, or Florida, is really, really low, especially when it comes to housing. When you consider what you can buy for, let's say, $500,000 or $1 million in a place like New York or California, I mean, we're talking about a postage stamp at best. But when you come to Georgia, if you're living in your rural areas, you might be living in a huge compound or even a mansion. So there really are some great options when it comes to living and purchasing homes and properties here in the state of Georgia. But that's not all. When you consider your day-to-day expenses, whether it's your food, your gasoline, your haircuts, or just the general things that you need on a daily basis, those things are typically much less expensive here in the state of Georgia. And that's become extremely popular, especially with telecommuting and remote work options here in the country. Georgia really is a great place to consider if you're looking for an affordable place to live. But like every first pro, there is a first con. And you can't talk about Georgia without talking about its high humidity. The summers in Georgia, they can get kind of hot. And boy, when you add that humidity, I mean, you'll walk outside and you'll sweat through your shirt in like 10 seconds. If you've ever been to a place like Las Vegas or Utah or somewhere like that, you'll see that sometimes they do get fairly hot. For example, in Las Vegas, sometimes it'll be 150 degrees. But relative to a 90-degree weather here in Georgia with that high humidity, it actually feels cooler. The humidity adds a significant element and impact that elevates the intensity of that heat. This is especially important for folks to consider who may be sensitive to the heat or who may have respiratory issues. And it's really significantly important to make sure that you take cover in those air-conditioned areas when it does get so hot in those high humid months. The humid months, typically they come in the summertime and into the early fall, and really it can be significantly intense. So high humidity is something you definitely want to look out for when coming to Georgia. But you know, most people find that the high humidity is worth putting up with because there are so many other great things about the state. But next, let's talk about pro number 2, and it is diverse culture. Georgia is a melting pot of culture, whether it's folks from all over the country or all over the world. all are welcome here in the state of Georgia, and it really does bring a unique perspective and blend of culture in the major cities and throughout the state. Whether you're talking about people from foreign countries or LGBT groups or just different types of folks that are coming into the city, you'll find so many wonderful people, and most everybody's really, really friendly, and you get to learn so much about how other cultures do things and how they eat and provide for their lifestyles. You'll find some of the most interesting events and foods in the state of Georgia because it's great diverse culture. And now on to con number 2, and it's traffic. You can't talk about Georgia without talking about traffic, especially if you've ever been stuck in rush hour in Atlanta. The traffic in your major metropolitan areas, it can be pretty intense, and sometimes it'll take a couple of hours just to go a few miles. It's something you do seriously want to consider, especially when you're traveling into or through those major metropolitan areas. Now, your rural areas, they're going to be a little bit less intense on the traffic, but you can't get anywhere in the state of Georgia typically without going through one of those major metropolitan areas, and you've got to watch out for that traffic. And now on to pro number 3, and it's that beautiful scenery. Georgia is definitely a place to take a break from the world and stop and smell the roses. Whether it's those beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains, those fantastic beaches, those majestic farmlands, the beautiful large lakes, or really any of the great landscapes throughout the state of Georgia, there is really some spectacular, beautiful scenery that you do not want to miss. And of course, if you do have any questions about some of the best places to stop in the state, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd love to tell you about some of those because I've really had the opportunity to see some very special spots. But you can't talk about pro number 3 without talking about con number 3, and it's natural disasters. So if you're wondering how a hurricane sees, whether a cloud wears a raincoat, or how long it takes to flood a village, Georgia might be the perfect place to find that out. We truly do have a lot of diverse weather, and natural disasters are at the pinnacle of that. We get a lot of leftover traffic from those hurricanes that come out of the southern regions and up the coastlines. We also see a lot of tornadoes throughout the areas, typically 20 or 30 throughout the year, and those can be quite devastating. And from those weather events, you'll often see a lot of rain that provides a lot of flooding, and it will often overflow and over-intensify the systems, and that can cause some significant damage throughout the state. Now, the state does have some great resources and plans in place for these, but you can't predict Mother Nature, and sometimes it can really interrupt the day-to-day life. But now for pro number 4, and it's that delicious food. I mean, good. We have some good food down here in Georgia. Whether it's that good old soul food or those perfect specialties from across the globe, it's right here in the state. Everybody knows the South is famous for its fried chicken, its sweet tea, and its biscuits. But you may not know that with all that diverse culture that we've had come from across the globe, we've got some of the best specialty foods you will find anywhere. Whether it's Asian food, whether it's Mexican, whether it's Chinese, or really a fusion or compilation of any of those, you will find some of the most spectacular food in Georgia, and you really need to get out there and check it out. But like any pro, there is a con number 4, and it's crime rate. You know, burglars, they're always looking for new windows of opportunity, and Georgia is no exception. Now, in your rural areas where things are a little bit more spread out and everybody kind of knows each other, you'll see those crime rates are typically a little bit lower. But when you get into those large metropolitan areas where the population numbers are really, really high, and maybe the police can't quite get to everything as quickly as they can in some of the other spots, and maybe folks don't know each other quite as intensely as they do in some of the rural areas, you'll find that those crime rates tend to tick up, especially when you find some lower income areas right next to some higher income areas. You'll find that those folks will come into those higher income areas and they'll pop off some burglaries and steal some things much more often because they can pop out of those areas and really not be seen. So crime rates, they're definitely something you want to consider, and if you do have any questions about those, please don't hesitate to ask. And now for pro number 5, and it is that growing job market. Georgia's job market is growing with opportunities, especially in technology, healthcare, and manufacturing. In recent years, we have seen a boom in the technology sector, whether it's all those great startups that have come into the cities like Atlanta and Savannah, or the big boys like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Apple and all of the other folks that have brought their technology companies here into Georgia, especially in your larger metropolitan areas. We've really seen that grow tremendously. And then there's those healthcare industries. When you talk about great learning hospitals, you can't help but think about Georgia. When you think about places like Emory University and Hospital, Piedmont Hospital Organization, or any of the great leading healthcare industries, there are a lot of them right here in the state of Georgia. But then you've got to think about manufacturing. Georgia has recently become a huge place for manufacturing to pour into, whether it's great companies like Kia, Hyundai, Rivian, or any of the other great manufacturing industries that have moved into the state. It really has become a boom for the growing job market right here in Georgia. And then there's con number 5, and it is that political climate. I mean, it's really, Annie, get your gun, throughout a lot of the state of Georgia. And then, of course, in your larger metropolitan areas, you'll find a little bit more of a progressive thinking. Let's face it, we've got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who came from Georgia. I mean, insane, never had a bigger name, right? But then you've also got some great folks like our Governor Brian Kemp, who's been incredibly good and helpful to our job market and to bring some more progressive thinking on the conservative side here to our state. And then, of course, you can't step away from the political climate discussion without talking about Atlanta's fantastic mayor, Andre Dickens, who has really brought some super progressive and innovative projects and thinking and processes here to the city of Atlanta. It really has been a tremendous impact. So there's people really on both sides of the spectrum, and depending on who you are or where you are, you might run into either one of them. So those are my top 5 pros and cons for the state of Georgia that you really do want to consider if you're considering a trip or a move to the state. And like every state, there really are those pluses and minuses. Georgia is no exception. As I mentioned before, if you do have any questions about any of these or anything else you might want to know about Georgia, Atlanta, real estate, or just something general, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can always comment below the video or text or call me anytime. I would love to hear from you, and I love being your resource for all things Atlanta and all things real estate. I do make it a point to get back to you as quickly as possible, so please don't hesitate to reach out. And if you did like this video, please consider giving it a like and sharing it with a friend. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel and clicking that little bell button to be notified when those new videos come out. I'd love to have you as a part of my audience, and I'd love to share with you the great things that I get to learn about the city and the state on a daily basis. Thank you again so much for tuning in today. I greatly appreciate your being here. And if you did like this video, I know you're gonna love the next one that pops up on your screen.